And welcome back to Out of the Park 23 as the Minnesota Twins. And this is our season setup episode, off-season recap, and the like. So, our only spring training injury is Jose Alvarez, who should be back at some point soon. The back stiffness had a kind of unknown recovery time now, where it was something that I don't really like taking chances with pitcher injuries. So we put him on the IL, and then there was a setback and we don't know when he'll be back. So Austin Love will be our fifth starter until Alvarez returns. But before I really get into anything, the players union of this save won a massive victory. League officials have just announced that the minimum service time required to reach free agency has been reduced to 5 years instead of 6. It also means then that people are eligible for salary arbitration a year earlier instead of Super 2s with 2+ years of service hitting arbitration. It's Super 1s now. People's arbitration estimates are jumping up quicker than they were otherwise. Like, for example, one of the ones I remember looking at was Abraham Gutierrez, who had a 1 point something estimate for next year, which now has jumped to 4.6. So, really, a lot of things change because of this, and I'm really not super sure exactly how I should be handling this. So, yeah, that's something that I'm going to have to now navigate. Is this mean that extending people sooner is a better option because you have less team control? Does it just mean you just have to churn through quicker? So we'll kind of see what that actually ends up meaning for the league. Does that mean that people are free agents sooner, or do teams just extend people more frequently? The like. So I guess while we're here, the one thing that we can talk about is that I did go ahead and trade for Max Meyer. So I've more or less ignored owner goals in this save, and I think it's something that I will continue to more or less ignore them. Oh hey, Hudson Potts is on the trade block. But I think that it's something that I might try to consider a little bit more, is actually trying to follow the goals a little bit more. Or at least the ones that show up that aren't, extend to somebody, and then obviously the winning goals we're going to try to be doing. But something like this, I think, is something that I could see myself actually wanting to do. So we went ahead and made that trade to acquire Max Meyer. He's a bullpen piece, so it doesn't really mess with stuff. He's extremely popular and is from Woodbury, Minnesota. I have been there plenty of times as a Minnesota person. So, yeah, so he fulfilled that goal. I'm guessing that the light blue, the kind of super success, is because he's extremely popular. So that did jump our fan interest up, because I did get hits from not extending Cano for whatever reason, and then not extending for, once he did sign somewhere. I forgot that that's how that worked, was that it's once they sign somewhere else and you're kind of confirmed not having them around, then that's when it really kicks in. So budget wise, we're kind of starting to stable off at this roughly 275 mark. What we actually want to do with that, what that means for our salaries, we'll kind of have to figure out. I did bump our development budget up a little bit, because I do think that we're going to have to do more with development because of that change to arbitration. So that's going to be really interesting to see what that actually does end up doing. What do we do with Alvarez? Julius Sanchez now hits arbitration sooner because he'll be a Super 1. I mean, this is a guy that I have to do what I can to keep him around. Let me see. Is he interested in that? I think if I can get him to sign a long-term deal, I think probably the sooner the better. I'm going to try to do that. I might even try to do it before I actually start playing any of these games, because these ratings are nuts. Where I think he's going to be super, super good. 55 stamina means he should be able to give you 6 innings pretty consistently. So, yeah, we'll kind of see what that ends up doing. But I mean, you can see there's a lot of people now that are at, and I think that this also means that the minimum ARB number went up too. That wasn't in that note, but there used to be a lot of 900Ks, but now 1.3 appears to be the minimum for people out of arbitration. So that's certainly an interesting thing as far as how you handle money goes, of giving out those higher end contracts might turn out to hurt you a little bit more because your kind of lower end contracts are taking up more of your budget. So what that means for a potential Baez extension, what that means for White or Nardi, extending either of them, because now these guys both hit free agency right away, as opposed to having the extra year with Colby before he got to that. So that's 438. You want 326. So more than likely the answer here is probably I can only keep one. But we'll see. I think what I'm gonna try to do is hopefully be able to see what happens with Karinchak before I have to make any decisions on White or Nardi. Because I would like to keep, I think, 2 of the 3 at the very least. And honestly, I think Nardi is probably higher priority just because he's the lefty. And the only other lefty that I have right now is Mazzucato, who had a very good spring training, which was really nice to see. Did not give up a single earned run. So that's really good. But all of these other guys that are down here are all right-handed pitchers. So while Colby White is, I think you could argue, probably in a vacuum better than Andrew Nardi, and like the ERAs kind of back that up too, of really 26 is the only one where Nardi had the better season ERA-wise. But he's a lefty, is very good at getting lefties out. And yeah, I guess the other thing I need to keep in mind for my salaries next year is that this $20 million is probably gone. I have a hard time seeing Burns sticking around if he has a year anything like he had last year. I would expect him to opt out. I'm actually curious. Okay. I cannot look at doing anything like that for him. So yeah, because really kind of the big question is something like this for Baez. This is, I think, a pretty reasonable contract, especially if I can tack on a team option here as well. Maybe drop the numbers slightly. Then I might look into doing something like this. But the thing is there, that kind of locks up my corner outfield spots. I am going to need a center fielder. I don't really want to play Baez in center. I mean, he's sort of like what Kepler was. I mean, really, Baez has just turned out to be my Max Kepler replacement, in that he's a very good defensive right fielder who can play center a little bit. So we'll kind of see. I would prefer to have a actual center fielder to replace Buxton, where I don't remember if I've actually shown this or not, but this is the contract he wants right now. There's just no possible way that I'm signing him to that. Like I said before, if it was willing to do like 1 or 2 years, keep the core through 2030, then maybe. But realistically, there's just no way that Buxton's staying around after this year. I'll throw the qualifying offer on him and call it a day. I mean, maybe he just takes the qualifying offer. I wouldn't hate that at all, because the people that I think are the most likely replacements for him is either Luis Lara, who's currently in AA, did okay, not great in spring training, or my first round pick from last year, Edgar Lazcano, who's, I think, probably a slightly better hitter, though some of his batting ratings have came down quite a bit, actually, in this last scouting report. So that's not great. Yeah, the overall rating might have jumped, but that was 65 potential down to 55 now. So obviously still very good defensive center fielder, but unfortunately the bat looks like it's gotten a lot worse. I think Lara as a center fielder is, yeah, 50 potential. So I mean slightly worse than Lescano. About the same defensively. But either one of those guys could be my replacement. But really, I'd like to get one more year out of Buxton because I think both Lara and Lescano are 2 years away. So it might be something where maybe I don't want to play Espinal or Evans in center field. It might be something where I'm either playing them a year early or I try to get a free agent next year on a 1 year deal. But we'll see. So really the only thing that we actually did in the offseason was that trade for Max Meyer. And yeah, so then as far as what other things happened, actually before I get into free agents, there was a very big trade that happened, which was Josh Simpson got traded. The 3-time All-Star, Cy Young winner in 2024, been lights out for the Cubs, led the league in Ks per 9 the last 3 seasons. Really just all very, very good years. Got traded to the Baltimore Orioles for, quite frankly, not a lot. Or if I had known that he was available, I think I would have put together a better package than this. So it is Dylan Lesko, who OSA is not really any higher on. Hasn't really turned out. Former high draft pick, I think 2022 is he? Yeah, he was their 101 in 2022. But isn't really a ton right now. Could pitch at the major league level. Looks like they have him in their bullpen right now. That might just be a spring training thing. But yeah, so Dylan Lesko is a part of the deal. This guy who I think is the centerpiece is Leo Robles. Looks like a good enough player. Looks like a 2027 draft pick out of high school. Yeah, he's still only 19. 70 outfield range is nice, but this bat isn't very guaranteed to develop at all. And then this guy, Jose Miramontes, is a whatever throw-in. OSA is not high on him either. So they didn't even get a single top 100 draft pick for him. This is an absolute steal for the Baltimore Orioles. Good for them. Unfortunate for me if I have to actually deal with him in the postseason because the Cubs have been bad, so I haven't had to actually, deal with this guy. But he's going to be a problem. And the Orioles are actually good. So yeah, that trade happened very, very early on in the postseason. Or it's like, see if we can find it. Okay, so we're in October. This is the playoffs. This is more playoffs. This is Twins win the World Series. All of this stuff. Lots of GMs and managers got fired this year. And then let's see. It was probably, or maybe it was like right after when I made the last video. Yeah, it's right here. So December 14th was that trade where, yeah, quick and top from the Orioles described the trade talk as quick and easy. Yeah, I would agree on Baltimore's side of, they say that this is what they want. You say, okay, I'm down for that trade. And yeah, so that was the big offseason trade. And then as far as free agency, so obviously the one person we can talk about is Sal Frelick. Signs not super late in. I guess here, let's just do it this way. Probably definitely not the deal that he wanted. He gets a 3-year, $41.6 million. As opposed to the 7 or 8 year deal he was hoping to get. But at age 30, he could definitely get another another big contract, I think, if he plays well the next 3 years. Hopefully he's not kind of in decline like my his last year says that he might be. But I mean the rating's down to 50 versus the 55 he was at, so that's not super helpful from wanting to think that. Let's see. Let's talk about some of the interesting signings. Ranger Suarez was the first $10+ million deal going to Sexsmith. And then we have Spencer Torkelson goes to the Jacksonville Spartans, the former Miami Marlins, on a 7-year, $200 million deal. So 28.6, that's not down super far from his initial ask. So, I mean, good for him on getting that type of money. I think this is not a super great deal. To be honest, I don't believe in the bat to the extent of paying him that type of money. It's just, you're all in on the home run power. The walks have looked like they've gotten better the last couple of years, where I think you would take this thing. But the problem is just that he's only had, I think, the 1 year above 140 OPS plus, yeah. So paying a first baseman that kind of money, it has to be somebody who produces like Vlad, where it is that 140 plus every year, putting up 5+ WAR every year. That, yeah, he had that great year, but it looks like his spring training was not very good. Which obviously spring training is not by any means the be all end all, but yeah. So then the next kind of big contract, Jesus Sanchez. Ooh, looks like he got a concussion. Wow, first game of spring training. That is unfortunate. Yep, first at bat. That's yeah, maybe it happened in the field or something, but that's not great for the Brewers in terms of one of their big signings. Coming off of a decent year, it looks like, between Jacksonville and Boston. Not super sure how I feel about that deal. It's not a name I've seen pop up on like awards or anything like that. Give a corner outfielder 18.6 a year, that's a little rough. So Caleb Ferguson goes to the Yankees on a $24 million deal for 5 years. Promise position closer, expect spot in the starting rotation. Okay, so what are the Yankees actually doing with him? They have him as their number 1 starter. I mean, you do you, Yankees, I guess? Oh, this guy looks good. Where did he come from? Top 10 pick in 2026. Yeah, looks like has just kind of only gotten better. So that's a very good piece for them. Garrett Cole is still here. Looks like he's absolute trash now, though. It looks like, even though he had a pretty good spring training, but wow. This is his last year, okay. So he will probably retire after this year with ratings like this, because there's no way he'll get signed to a deal. I mean, unless he somehow has a very good year with those stats, but wow, they've got 3 really, really good pitchers in Ferguson, Mayo, and Rodriguez. Sixto Sanchez working out of the bullpen. Okay, that's a choice. I'd be starting him over Acevedo. Clanahan is a bullpen guy. I did think about going after him, but I made that trade for the lefty instead. Aaron Judge really hasn't been much of a guy in this save, to be honest. So let's see, what other big signings were there in this offseason? There really weren't like a ton of the kind of massive contracts. Let's see. I'm just kind of looking for anything else that was 10 million. Tanner Houck gets 4-year, 50 million to San Diego. These him as a closer. 342 for Xander Bogaerts to Chicago. Looks like they're going to have him play short. I think that's a mistake. I do not think he is a shortstop. Verdugo resigns in Boston. Victor Robles gets a 6-year, $60 million deal. That's just crazy. Because, I mean, yeah, he hasn't really done like a ton. I mean, he's been kind of fine. He's a decent enough center fielder. He's got the 65 range that you want. So, I mean, it's not like the worst contract in the world, but this is not the direction I would be doing the money. Maybe this is how they had to do it in order for it to work for their budget. But I mean, you don't want to be paying him more money at 36 than you are at 31. You would want that to be going down for sure. But let's see. So there's Caleb Ferguson. I think that's kind of most of the bigger stuff. Obviously, you've got all these reliever contracts. Oh, Drew Strotman. Like he's gonna get a shot as a starter in still in LA, just swapping LA teams. Was Syndergaard still around here? We talked about the Frelick contract. Jeffrey Springs has been pretty good as a left-handed reliever. Gets a $10 million deal there. Clase only gets 6.3. That's actually a little surprising to me. Miles Straw gets a pretty big contract from the Dodgers. Which, I mean, is I think pretty reasonable because he's a very, very good defender. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, he's kind of put up this sort of around 10 zone rating in center field for the most part, other than this year, which is just probably a weird down year. But yeah, because I mean, he's been roughly that 3 WAR player, which means that you're paying a little bit less than that for him at 17, but I don't think that's a contract I would be signing either. Talked about Xander Bogaerts, talked about Ardugo, Robles, Monte Wade. It's a 4-year, $60 million deal for Sexsmith as well, coming off of a basically being a league average hitter for the first time in a while. He did win a Gold Glove this last year. Yeah, since 2021. This was the first time he's been above 2 WAR and above league average with the bat. So they then go out and pay him $60 million over 4 years through age 37. I mean, that's not a good contract at all. So, yeah, that's sort of the signings. Somehow, against all odds, Tyler Duffy continues to get contracts, which I find it fun to see where he signs every year because he keeps getting deals, and it's always around this time, right before spring training. He signs somewhere to probably do about this. Looks like he's. I mean, it was the first part of 2027 was pretty good for him. Did he get traded at the deadline? No, he got released by Toronto. That's interesting. He was pitching pretty well for them. But yeah, so the other thing that I wanted to talk about before we get into some of the Twins stuff is the Hall of Fame and what all is going on here. So the Ortiz vote, I believe this just is the real life one. I don't believe that was one I did. So 2023, Alex Rodriguez is the only one who makes it. Somehow K-Rod's votes are going down. I am not happy about that. I think that he's a no doubt Hall of Famer. I think that in real life he probably gets in 24. I don't think he'll be a first ballot. But I think going like 64 to 76 or something like that is, I think, a pretty reasonable expectation for him. And then Billy Wagner as well looks like doesn't make it in, which I'm not super sure if I expect him to get in real life. I think he probably should, but whether or not I think he will, I don't really know. Then Ichiro somehow not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Adrian Beltre not a first ballot Hall of Famer. The Hall of Fame voting, this has been super weird. Like, Felix Hernandez isn't going to make it in. Joe Mauer's not going to make it in. Buster Posey's probably not going to make it in. Like, I don't get some of these things. But Sabathia makes it in on third ballot. Helton does make it in finally on his 9th ballot. I think this is actually a path I would not be shocked at all if he takes in real life. I think there's definitely questions about his thing, but I was voting for him. And then we get 4 first balloters. The 2028 one had a lot of very interesting people on it. But Greinke, Pujols, Verlander, and Miguel Cabrera all get in first ballots. I don't know that I expect Greinke to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but obviously all 3 of these guys very much will be first ballot Hall of Famers. Let's actually take a look and see who is upcoming. Yu Darvish, Corey Kluber, Strasburg. Wonder what his sort of end of his career was in this save. Pretty bad. So it'll... Man, this is interesting. His case is less good than I think I feel like it should be. But I mean, this is almost exclusively what happened in real life. It's not a lot about what happened in the save. So maybe Strasburg isn't the Hall of Fame kind of lock that I thought he was. I mean, obviously injuries very much have derailed his career. And maybe he just pitches longer than 23 and he's able to put up a couple more good years. But these metrics don't... They say that I don't think Strasburg gets in this save. Yu Darvish is like maybe, but probably not as well. I think his numbers look worse than Strasburg's. Kluber's aren't super great either. Yeah, this is interesting. There's not really a ton of... Oh, this is just pitchers. Okay, let's see. Hitters. Robinson, Cano, Andrew McCutchen, Elvis Andrews, no. But Cano might get in. I mean, this looks like a Hall of Fame resume for sure. McCutchen, yeah, probably. I don't know whether... Let's see. Looks like, I mean, he had a pretty decent age 35 year. 36 year was really good. So, yeah, that'll sort of be interesting. Well, we'll maybe take a look at this kind of every couple of years as far as the Hall of Fame goes. I don't think we need to talk about this every year, but I think taking the occasional look at it is good. It's also showing me that I think that there maybe still needs to be some tweaks to the system because if Ichiro is not a first ballot Hall of Famer, then there's something wrong with whatever system is implemented here. I mean, Beltre's going to be probably a first ballot Hall of Famer too. I don't hate him getting in on 3, but I mean, some of these just don't make sense. Like, K-Rod should be getting in. He also shouldn't be dropping from 74% of the vote to 43. I mean, I get that these 4 take up a lot of spots, but I mean, I guess we'll see what happens in 29. But see, how many years has Rodriguez been on the ballot now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this will be year 7 for him now. So we'll see what happens, but there's that. All right, so now getting into the Twins setup for the upcoming year. Obviously, not a ton has really changed from when we looked at this in the last video. Baez is going to be our backup center fielder, playing every 3rd day. I don't love any of my other options to kind of fill that role, as I don't feel like I can have a 5th outfielder. I mean, you can make the argument that maybe this just should be Ty Evans instead of Emmanuel Rodriguez, and I don't hate, and I wouldn't strongly disagree with that either. Honestly, maybe I even should. That's something I might actually go back and take a look at. Let's see. He was not good in spring training. Rodriguez was better. But neither one was super great. And he's honestly not like that much better in center. Because I'm pretty sure I played him there some last year. I mean, he looks like pretty serviceable in 26 games. So that might be an option for us, because I don't really want to play Baez in center. Not every 3rd day anyway. I mean, I could have Royce doing that. I don't know that I super want Arroyo playing that much. So obviously he takes over for Amaya, which I guess we can let's take a look at kind of all these guys. So Amaya went to Jacksonville on, oh, looks like a minor league free agent signed deal, 1.3. Keone Kavoko is Memphis, so that's St. Louis on a minor league deal, 1.1 potentially. Giovanni Moran with Boston, a 3-year, $8 million deal. It's like he's on waivers now. So that's interesting. And then, see, we talked about Frelick. And then, yeah, I think those are the main ones that we let walk. So, yeah, I mean, I guess there's not really a ton has really changed. Myers added instead of Nunez. And Austin Love is in this spot because of the Alvarez injury. So then let's take a look at prospects. We are the 14th best minor league system right now. That kind of feels about right. It's a okay system. There's some pieces here, but there's not a ton that's super close. You can see this is a lot of rookie ball, A ball spots for a lot of these people. So that's a little concerning to me, though I do have a lot of people still locked up for a couple of years. So it's not the worst thing in the world for sure. So the top prospect is now Denny Oviedo, our first draft pick in 2027. Strikeouts weren't there in his first year, but he'll repeat at the Florida League this year, see if he can get those strikeouts up, because obviously you'd really like to have this pitcher. This is a very, very good pitcher if that actually develops into anything like that. Danny Collazo, I'd like to see hit a little bit better in rookie ball this upcoming year. I think that there's definitely a chance that he could start to skyrocket up. Obviously, with that high contact, high home run power, I like that the discipline is pretty decent here, and that he's taking, honestly, a respectable, I think, amount of walks for being 19. So you don't really even want to play him at first base. He really is DH only. One of my scouts discoveries, which, as well as this guy, Esteban Gonzalez, was a scouting discovery at the very end of 2027, who's now the 73rd best prospect. Obviously, the prospect rankings in this game, you kind of have to take the pretty big grain of salt, because they like ranking international free agent signings in the top 5. So, yeah, I mean, lots of green here, lots of 55 pluses. And this is very much reminiscent of Yendrys Gomez, where that's, I think, kind of the upside here is that kind of number 3 pitcher, which obviously you would definitely take from a scouting discovery. Tyler Ayers will be our starting third baseman in the majors this year. Spring training was not what I hoped for him for sure, but I think he's going to be very good defensively. And yeah, we're kind of going to trial by fire, see what happens there. I think he's going to be really good. Lionel Carducci was our international free agent signing this year. I mean, kind of is what it is. Still a couple years before he comes out of the international complex. Hector Belton's potential has been continuing to fall. I'm actually a little surprised that this stuff is still just 55 with 265 potential pitches. I do still really like the high stamina. This school is fun in that I seem to keep getting people from there. Frank Sabando is going to actually be promoted into the Dominican League now. As far as another one of those just kind of big bat pieces, kind of similar to Collazo. Levi Huisman did get to make 2 starts in spring training because of injuries, both to Alvarez, but also Herman Marquez also had a back issue where he missed a couple of weeks. And first start went really well, second one went terribly. He was good when he was out of the bullpen before. I mean, if there's injuries or stuff, he's probably number 7, I would say, on my team right now in the starting pitcher list, kind of behind Love, as well as the 5 guys that I would like to be seeing pitching. Danny Coronel, I think there's a pretty good shot will be our shortstop once Once Correa leaves the team. I'd like to see him hit obviously at A ball this year, but I mean, yeah, he's a pretty good defensively. I don't think he's going to win as many Gold Gloves as Correa won, but I think there's a shot that he gets, one or two potentially. His fielding stats were pretty good last year. So I am excited about him. I think he could make some rises through the system this year. Lascano, unfortunately, my scout soured on quite a bit in this last one. You can see drop from 65 to 55. Contact down, power down. Obviously not great. He's still super good defensively. Still is the slightly better hitter, and honestly, it looks like slightly better defender too with the 5 higher arm than Luis Lara. But I think either one of those guys could be my center fielder. If not next year, then in 2 years. We'll probably be trying both of them out. And then kind of these guys that are outside the top 200. Chris Christmas. I mean, I want him to be good just because of the name. Was our 3rd round pick. Injury proneness, fragile, you really don't like to see. But, I mean, obviously he'll still be in rookie ball. Jalen Bass. Both him and Belton, even though neither of them have really done much in rookie ball, I don't want to have them be there for a 3rd year with the pedigree I have on both of them. So we're going to just throw them into A-ball and get them some more starts and kind of see what happens. Armijo is our international free agent signing from 26. So I think a little bit older. I mean, pretty similar thing here as far as kind of these center fielders that super high range. If they turn out to be able to hit, then great. He's also honestly, this is a fairly reasonable reliever. The 60 stuff potentially. And we'll kind of see, obviously, he's primarily a center fielder. But maybe if the bat doesn't develop at all, we use him more as a reliever. We'll see. Luis Collado, I think there's a pretty good shot gets promoted to A-ball during this year if he gets off to a good start in rookie ball, because he had a pretty decent first campaign, but he has only 19 still. But I'd like to get him a little bit more run, but I mean, I'm liking seeing this contact go up. The avoid Ks, both of those being at the 35 level already at 19 is really nice to see. I mean, obviously this is potentially, I think, just Luis Ariz again, which would be nice to have for a second baseman, because his timeline does mesh decently well, I think, with Royce's leaving. Nick Chandler, our scouts, dropped on a little bit, but the contact is still super high. Not as many home runs as you would like to see from a first baseman, especially when you consider the fact that he's not really even a first baseman. He's pretty much just a DH. I didn't notice that he's fragile, so that's not great either. But I think, I mean, he'll probably get to the point where he'll get some run. Nelson Mejia, I should probably promote to A-ball. Let me actually kind of following that same logic with some of the pitchers there. Yeah, my outfield could use some help here, so we will go ahead and promote him. I'm not super concerned about him playing center. He's not one of the high priority guys at this point for me. I thought he was going to be at one point, but does not appear to be the case. I'm surprised he's on this list. So this is another recent scouting discovery. I mean, high work ethic is nice, low intelligence not so much. I mean, we'll see. He's a 16-year-old pitcher. Who knows? Luis Lara, we've talked about. Jesus Chicada, so I'm not really sure why he's on this list either. OSA is just higher on him than my scout is. That might be a sign to look to trade him. Javi Perez, my international signing in 24. That's just 11 games there. Maybe we'll give him a little bit more time, but he can probably get promoted to A-ball, I would guess, during the year as well. So yeah, I mean, it's not a super high-end farm system, but it is 5 top 106 prospects. Decent amount in that 101 to 200 range. The team doesn't really need reinforcements quite yet. we're starting to lose some people, and we're gonna be losing more kind of over the next couple of years. We'll have some decisions to make in arbitration next year, but as far as this team in the upcoming year goes, I mean, it's pretty similar to the team that won 96 games last year and won the World Series. It's a different backup shortstop, it's a different fourth outfielder. Atrian's actually playing the field now, but it's pretty similar. I mean, the biggest change I think is Tyler Ayers taking over at third base with Miranda shifting to first. But yeah, I did finally actually rerun the schedule. I didn't realize at first that it was just playing out the same schedule, which I didn't really like because I realized I played the Dodgers on opening day for like 4 years in a row. But that has finally been adjusted. We'll try to be better in the future about actually adjusting and regenerating a schedule at the beginning of every year so it doesn't rerun the same one. But yeah, I'm hoping that the team will get off to a better start this year. We'll have another good season. I did, instead of doing what I've done in the past for spring training, which is having this quote unquote starting lineup being all of my people that I just kind of wanted to give some at bats to, my younger players, rotation being a bunch of different guys, that I just kind of left it being the team that I was expecting to be coming out of spring training with as my starters. So hopefully that means I'll get off to a better start and I won't have as many people slump and struggle at the beginning of the year. But we'll see how that goes. I think this is going to be the end of the episode now. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.